Are you okay? Are you okay? Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you. I'm Jay Swan. We did this 3 weeks or so ago, and I said that we would do it again. We thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to introduce Ed Higgins. Attorney Higgins will be the moderator for tonight. We have representatives from the Board of Education, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen. The Finance Director is here. Any questions that you raise, we'll be very willing to try to answer. I would ask that if you are going to ask a question, we have 2 mics on either side at the end of the aisle. Please come down, identify yourself by name, ask your question to the moderator, and the moderator will direct your question to who might best be able to answer it. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ed Higgins.
Thank you, Jay. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Jay asked me to note. You probably saw in the hallway there's a table with some information about the meeting and the budgets and the process. There's also a document up there with some frequently asked questions that you might want to pick up. If we can, tonight, similar to the last time that we all met, if we can have folks that are interested in making a comment or asking a question, if you could just come down maybe and line up along the aisles behind the microphones, and then we'll alternate back and forth. And I know Crystal is taking some comments from folks at home who are listening or questions, and we may break periodically to take input questions from those folks. So who wants to break the ice and get started? We all want to go home. Megan?
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
I guess my first question is I would like to hear from our board members. I know there was no presentations that were going to be done this evening, but do you have any follow-up information or answers to questions that were posed at the last open forum?
Board of Ed, one of us. Megan, do you want to just come up and maybe reframe that? Yeah.
I guess then Megan Bard Morse, address and all that stuff too. I was just wondering if any of the boards had follow-up information or answers to questions that were posed at the last open forum. It could be Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, or Board of Finance. Thank you.
Well, from our perspective at the Board of Education, I just want to reiterate that our budget is already, these last 2 years, is past the tipping point of what functional school district and their budget can be expected to do. I don't want to be an alarmist, but we do have large increases coming up, contractual increases for next year. And knowing the limitations of what the grand list and what the allowances are in the budget, trying to have a maintenance budget of perhaps 3.8% or so, which is around $750,000 right now, would be a really difficult target for us to reach at this present time. So that's what we'll be facing at the Board of Education, and we can look at the reductions that we would have to do at the Board of Education level if we were required to reduce our budget projection of 3.8.4% by $400,000. That could be quite difficult for the district to assume without making some difficult cuts to programs and staffing. And we are already at a bare minimum level, so those would be difficult. We are struggling with our test scores, and any further reduction in our staffing could further impact our math scores, especially at the elementary level where we need resources. We need to maintain our new math series, Illustrative Math, which requires a lot of professional development, a lot of resources, a lot of materials, and those are the kinds of things that we try to keep from being reduced by the budget, but over time and over the impacts of the cascading number of cuts that we experience over the years, it's getting more and more difficult. So that's our perspective from the Board of Education.
Thank you, Victor. Michael, did anybody from the Board of Finance want to? Ma'am?
My name is Katie O'Neill. I interact with I have two students, one in the middle school, one in the elementary school. And I was just wondering if either board is aware of where we are, because the latest information I found was, I think maybe last year or 2 years ago, the price per student, the cost per student spent, we are the second lowest town in the whole state. There's only Wooten spends less on their students than we do. We are below Webster, Massachusetts, which is right next to us, and they are struggling and have free lunch for all their kids. They have a lot of free services that we do not have for our school. And how do we expect our students to learn with so much, so few dollars spent on our students, and then going and making the jump to the academy where there is funding and not being left behind as compared to the other towns that are joining us at the academy, and how we plan to maintain our kids even learning things, because there's no budget for anything.
Thank you.
So, simple answer is we can't, and we don't. I don't know how to say it more plainly than that. We spend not enough, and if we're forced to cut even farther, our education will get worse. There's no more clear way to say that. We're at a breaking point. We've been there for years. We've heard from members of the community where they've said, well, you say every year, but it's always fine. It's fine, don't worry, it's fine. You always manage. And we don't. We manage to keep the lights on. We manage to keep some learning going. We have phenomenal teachers. We have phenomenal administration that's working very, very hard to make sure the kids learn. But at the end of the day, when you're resource constrained, you cannot learn adequately. And the fact that are we still second to last? We might be third to last or fourth to last. But we're at the bottom. We can afford to be in the middle if we just pay the average. The average. And I don't think anybody moved to town and says, geez, I really hope my kid gets an average education, that's fine. If they do, maybe. None of them saying, I hope my kids get really subpar education. I think that's going to be great for their future. But that's what we're giving them. And then we're sending them in, and we hear frequently, oh, the academy will take care of them. The academy's great. Sure, the academy's great. If you're able to learn what the academy's teaching you. And our kids are getting less and less prepared to compete, to work with, to participate with kids from other towns. We used to be the gold standard. We are not. We're falling behind. Our kids are not able to fulfill their potential. And that's our fault, because we're not willing to even pay for an average education.
Thank you.
And always in that final hour of us, coming through following year, if it looks like we had to eliminate a few positions and then they come back, that's all the good work that's being done behind the scenes. It doesn't mean that the budget's been impacted. It doesn't mean that the programs have been cut and not coming back. It just means that there's a 24-hour cycle of people working, trying to make everything available the best that they can. And sometimes the opportunities get seized to make that happen. It just doesn't mean, though, that you're getting the same type of programs that you did the year before. It just means that we're able to kind of, like Adam said, keep the lights on. But it's getting to a point now where we don't have those resources, and all our tricks that we used to have to be able to kind of create, comfortably a budget those are all gone, and those days are long gone. So right now, what we're dealing with is some hard questions that we have to answer as a community, and that's what we're doing here together, to try to figure out what that is. And you're gonna hear tonight about Prop 46 and all sorts of different things, and those are the questions that have to be answered, and pretty quickly, because this budget here that we're working on for right now is what we're working on now. We could get some solutions maybe and try to kind of get through this budgetary situation, but in 5 to 10 years, it's gonna be even a problem that we won't even know what to deal with if we don't answer the questions now.
Thank you, Hans. Jay?
Just a quick comment, especially for those at home that are watching on YouTube and also folks in the audience. If you have a question, that's fine. However, if you have a comment, I'd like you to direct it. You can send our questions from home. You can send it to assistant@woodstockconnecticut.gov. And Crystal Adams will be receiving that. She'll be able to give that question to Ed Higgins and hopefully be answered here.
Yeah,
Yes.
woodstockct.gov.
At Woodstock
Don't spell it
CT.
out. Woodstock CT.
No gov?
woodstockct.gov.
woodstockct.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Just over.
Sir?
Okay, thank you.
John Lugos from East Woodstock. So let me get this straight. You don't want comments, you just want questions. I've got both, but
That's for the people watching on YouTube.
understood. Thank you.
Questions, I think we prefer.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to start with just a quote from the Woodstock Town website. It says here, "The Board of Selectmen understands that decisions we make will have a lasting impact on tomorrow. Therefore, each decision that impacts the community must be considered carefully. The Selectmen, town staff, and various commissions, boards, and committees are working diligently to enhance the quality of life to our residents and future generations." So my question is, and this is more of a comment, but also I'll put it as a question because I'd like a response to it. How is it that you folks, not just in your positions on board, but as community leaders in your political parties, your political organizations, and your community, how is it that you've let our schools be near the bottom of the state for at least a decade or more since Proposition 46 had been put in place? What work have you done to try to fix that? Not to try to patch the holes as the water is leaking out, but actually to try to fix that. I'd like to know. That's one question. Then I have an idea for you that I have put out there for several years, and that I actually shared some documentation with the selectmen. I sent it to selectmen@woodstock.gov, but you guys got it, okay. And this is just one idea for getting more revenue for the town. Woodstock Fair every year draws a lot of people from out of town into this community. It's a lot of tax on our roads and so forth. Why don't we put a small stipend on that would go towards education, or maybe to the general fund, or you name it? You could exempt people from, that live in town if you want to. Now, I realize the Woodstock Fair is the agricultural committee, the agricultural organization is a nonprofit, but I don't think anybody walks into the Woodstock Fair and looks around and says that all that's happening there is for nonprofit. There's plenty of for-profit things happening at that fair. It ought to be something that you all look at. There's other large events in town, the craft fair or whatever it is up at the Pink House, that also draw a huge crowd. Putting a few bucks on that, I don't think it'd make anybody go home. I know I always spend way too much at the fair. I love the fair. I came to the fair. It's one of the reasons I moved to Woodstock in 2000. But I think it's time that you looked at that. And I know that they do some good stuff with some scholarships and so forth, but I think you need to look hard at other sources of income. If you don't want to touch Proposition 46, which is really what it's all about, then at least start to look at other things to get a little bit more income into town. Can you do that? Will you do that? That's what I've got. So those two things.
Ed, I can respond. You had sent that statement to the Board of Selectmen last week. You would ask to have it read into the minutes. When the minutes are published, you will see that I read it into the minutes. the issue around the 80% plus that goes to the schools, that's state law. The other issue about why is this happening, why is that happening, this is 2023. A lot of the stage was set for what we're dealing with today, 20, 30 years ago. So I don't want to take shots at these elected officials on why aren't they solving the problem that's been here for 20 or 30 years. And when you see the minutes, you'll notice. The other thing is your suggestion about tacking on, if you will, a surtax to the fair to go back to the town. We're looking into that. We can't just call the fair and say, hey, starting next year, you've got to tack this on. We're working with the town's attorney looking at, again, ideas, but many ideas, there's reasons we do things, and it's Connecticut state statute, so we're looking into them. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. That's the first I'd heard that you are looking into it. So that's the kind of communication I know I would really appreciate if there is some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Hi, Lindsay Paul. I want to first of all acknowledge the work that you all who are sitting up here do on behalf of our town and on behalf of all the people here. Thank you. And also thank you for hosting these forums and to all the people who have shown up and have taken interest. It's unusual, and it's really important that we have these voices coming forward. I like that Mr. DeLugos is moving straight to solutions, but I would like to get a little more specificity on the problem and would ask Mr. Toth and possibly Mr. Frankhauser to recap. At the last forum, Mr. Toth identified budget-related reductions in the public schools of the past 10 years. I found them shocking and alarming. I think it would be instrumental, Mr. Toth, if you would recap those. And then I would like to hear, what do you think the impact of these losses have been on our students, have been on our students academically, have been on our students' level of engagement, have been on our students' social and emotional learning, have been on our students' ability to move forward and not only participate at the academy, but do well in all that the academy offers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to follow up on what Jay said. The boards that you have in front of you, you have the legislative body of the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and these are people that really do care about solving these problems, and there's constant communication between Mr. Doherty, Mr. Swan, Mr. Frankhauser, myself, Mrs. Sterlo, our business manager, Mrs. Fitzpatrick. So we have a constant dialogue going on the things that we want to try to accomplish and looking at solutions on how to get there. But since 2012, we have lost about 14 teachers at the elementary and middle school level. Remember, we're talking about pre-K through 8 is a separate entity. That is your public schools. And you have Woodstock Academy and the other academies and high schools that we send our students to. So our high school costs, through no fault of any of these boards or your own, is fixed by Connecticut general statute. Those high school costs cannot be altered. So whatever price cost that you get from Woodstock Academy, Kinley, VOAG, other regional high schools, those are fixed by statute. We cannot change them. So when you have a ordinance that limits your spending and you can only cut from your pre-K to 8s. And over the years, we've lost 14 classroom teachers. We've lost a math coordinator that coordinates your math implementation across the district. We've lost our English language arts coordinator. We've lost our technology coordinator. Imagine, we have 800 iPads floating out there in the schools, and we don't have a technology coordinator to instruct not only the students, but the teachers on how to integrate the technology into their lessons. They have to learn it on their own. They do a wonderful job, but it's still a lack of support that other districts have that we don't have. We've lost a librarian at the middle school. We don't have a librarian at the elementary school. We don't have a computer teacher at the elementary school. We've lost a Spanish teacher at the middle school. We've lost a gifted and talented teacher at both the elementary school and Woodstock Middle School. We've lost 13 paraprofessionals. We've lost a lot of things over the years, and it just keeps coming to us, and we try to keep the losses away from the students. But at this point, it's getting more and more difficult to do that. And the question again is, where do we rank? We are about $2,500 per student below the state average. We are at the bottom of spending in all of Windham County. So if you think of the 12 towns in Windham County, we are at the very bottom in spending, and we are 164th out of 169 towns in spending. At the Woodstock Academy, we are right in the middle of the state, about 85th, 84th in spending, but that's for your high schools. That's a fixed cost, and we are at 164th for your elementary schools, your pre-K to 8. So it's just an inequity that's been building and building, and it's really important for us to take a look at that. And this board, a finance board, a selectmen board of ed, they really need to hear from you in finding solutions to alleviate this problem.
And that was the situation prior to COVID. So you take the ramifications of what happened, now that life is kind of getting back to normal, and we're starting to see it had a major impact on the development of children, the learning aspect. And now we don't really have the staff, the tools, the plan to, add financial services to make that even, something we can correct. So prior to all this, we were kind of, maintaining, we were somewhat, having a status quo, and then you have a terrible situation like COVID. Now we got to rebuild, and there's no structure there to really do it without having to try to really kind of see for the real situation that we have budgetarily right now with the services that we lost.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Hans. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sue Connor from Woodstock Valley. I first want to say I understand that the Board of Ed and Board of Finance, you're all volunteers. You don't get paid. Thank you for what you're doing. Board of Selectmen, thank you as well. My first question is, when I hear people like the gentleman who was up here saying, where are the solutions, where are the solutions? One of them that is being discussed with the problem of Prop 46, do you feel up there in the positions you have that you have the ability to change that? Because of your role, as opposed to those of us sitting out here.
Sue, this is what I love. You're sitting here minding your own business. You get people on either side. You want to take that? You want to take that? No, not really, but I will. Prop 46 is a law. It's an ordinance. It's a law. And as somebody expressed to me today, if you pull up to a four-way stop, if you don't stop, you're in non-compliance. Not to mention, in addition to a ticket, you may get broadsided by another car. It's the law. It cannot come from any of these people, okay? It has to come from the citizens. And I understand, I know that there's a lot of concerns. I know there's been talk over the years of doing away with it, amending it, et cetera, et cetera. It has to come from the citizens. Any change. And it has to go to a town meeting, it has to go to a referendum, it has to go to a vote, so everyone has input. So that's about the answer. Is really, our hands are tied, as far as that's concerned, and there's nothing we can do. It's an ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask a question of this side of the room, I suppose?
Sure.
Okay. Because we've heard some from the Board of Ed about the cuts that might need to be made. And a couple weeks ago, heard about all the kind of financial problems that we're facing this coming fiscal year. I wonder if the general town government side can speak to what cuts they need to consider. And I understand that many things in the general government budget are either mandates or the prices are set and we don't have control over. So which are the items that you do have control over and that you might need to cut?
I'll take that. Before I was a volunteer, I did it on my own. Please, gotta get glasses. These are things that by state statute and other things we have to, they can't be reduced or cut. Audit services. And again, many of these are ordinances, the Connecticut state statutes, that sort of thing. But audit services, property revaluation, environmental, that's salt and oil contamination, groundwater testing, monitoring and reporting with Connecticut Deep, elections, probate, IT services and updated equipment for the town hall, the town garage, union contractual services, that's both teachers, paras, AFSCME, Teamsters, insurance increase, life insurance, health insurance. They tell us what the premiums are going to be, much like any of us at home. You know, you get a letter from your insurance company, your premium's going up. Pension increase, fire and EMS services, Department of Health. They provide a wide variety of services to the town. Northeast District Department of Health, they assess us based on population, what our assessment's going to be every year. Animal control, that's from NECA. Debt service payments. Certain boards and commissions, planning and zoning, inland wetlands, that sort of thing. Fuel and electric costs. That's another thing. People are concerned, as am I, as a homeowner in town. My electric goes up. My fuel goes up. When I take my vehicle, my gasoline goes up, much like you. Also for the town, our diesel, parts for trucks at the town garage, our electric costs, all of those things. Hauling fees and trash removal to maintain our transfer station. Those fees go up. OSHA requirements, again, the feds, we are required to do certain things for OSHA. Paramedic intercept, that's from NECA. Ambulance gets called, a paramedic is dispatched, usually from Dave Kimball, to meet that ambulance to assist on the trip to wherever they happen to be going. Emergency dispatch services, that's Quinebaug Valley for us, you call 911, the call goes to there, they dispatch. And telephone services. These are all things that we can't be reduced or cut. Now, these are things for consideration. I'm not saying we're cutting them. These are things that we would consider. They may be impacted. Board of Selectmen, Office of the First Selectman, the Assessor, the Tax Collector, the Town Clerk, the Town Hall. We saw a couple of years ago in an effort to save money, we closed on Fridays. Now we're at 4 days a week. Contingency emergency fund, that's sort of like rainy day. When it hits the fan, we gotta have something, money, to be able to correct that situation, whatever it is. Open space, where we buy development rights on various properties in town. Constable services. Highway department, you know, the guys that plow your roads. The transfer station, we're open 4 days a week. Maybe we won't be open 4 days a week. Public recreation, health and welfare services, other companies and agencies we contract with to provide services to citizens of Woodstock, and various boards and commissions. So it's a catch-22. There's things we must provide, and there's services that we do provide. The ones that we do provide, we're looking at perhaps changing and considering how things may be changed.
Libraries fall under boards and commissions?
Libraries is part of it. There's no state law that we have to provide libraries. So, yeah, libraries. Thank you.
And then, you know, like Jay said, you know, the process as far as Prop 46 starts with the community. And there has been attempts in the past to repeal it, and they've been unsuccessful. So as far as abolishing or getting rid of the Prop 46, the probability is very low. But as far as amending Prop 46, that's a whole different kind of discussion that has gone on. And in recent years, special costs have been kind of exempt from under Prop 46, and that was, you know, for us, transportation expenses and special ed. So those conversations could probably go on and maybe see what we can explore that way. But those conversations are going on. But as far as Prop 46 in its entirely, that starts with the community out there for sure, petitions.
Can I add to that for a second?
I just want to be clear about the process and on how that works. In order for Proposition 46 to be amended or repealed, it has to wind up at a town meeting at the very least, and that can be removed to a referendum by petition. There's only two ways that gets to be put towards the question at a town meeting. The Board of Selectmen can set a question for a town meeting, or it can be done by petition. So those are the avenues that can get done by. I just want to let everybody know that that's how it works. We can't up here as individuals start this process. And even if we did, if there's not community support, the community has to vote to make a change. We cannot make that change on behalf of the community. So I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Good evening. My name's Sherry Magnan, and I've lived in Woodstock for about 15 years. And I've said this at some other meetings, and I'm going to reiterate it here. I've been hearing about Prop 46 the entire time I've been here. I'm frustrated with continuing to hear about it, and I think I'm on the fence if we need it or not. And so I had a question. I think Michelle answered part of it, but so I'm gonna comment a lot more than I'm going to ask questions. I think it comes down to a trust issue for me as a citizen. I don't necessarily trust that our finances are 100% in the best interest of the community as a whole. And I do think there has to be some control mechanism in place for that. And I believe that that's part of the reason for Prop 46. Do I think it needs to be amended? Absolutely 100%. And I think it needs to be amended in favor of the school. Most of the people that live in Woodstock moved here for the same reason I did, which was for the schools. I came from Rhode Island. I could have lived in Putnam, Sterling, Killingly, anywhere that we looked at homes. We chose Woodstock because of the school system. And there's a lot of people that move here for that exact reason. So I think looking at amending it, and whether that's something we have to petition for or it comes from the selectmen, that is something that needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. And it needs someone to come up and make that suggestion. The academy is an uncontrolled expense. They can increase it, they can decrease it. They're not gonna decrease it, but there's nothing that we as citizens can do about that. There's nothing the board can do about it, right? So why are we trying to lump that in to our entire budget when we know there's no control over that? It's not like heating and fuel costs that go up or down. It is an amount that we are given and we have to pay. The only other solution to that is we build our own high school, which we know is not going to happen, right? So let's look at amending Prop 46 to not include that academy expense when we're looking at the overall school budget. It's not the full solution, but it would make a big difference because that, I believe, is one of their bigger expenses. The other thing I want to just talk about for a minute is, and why I have some of these trust issues on how our money is spent, is I've sat back and I've attended a number of meetings, I've listened to a number of meetings, I've read through the minutes on a number of meetings, particularly about the ARPA funds. And this is kind of where I'm going with this. So we had a town meeting on October 13th, 2001. It was asked for public's comment of how we wanted to spend the $2.3 million we were going to be receiving. It specifically, and this is quoting Pat Boyd at the meeting, benefits the majority of the residents and specialty causes impacted by the pandemic. The community spoke. They said that they wanted the money go to town rec fields, town beach improvements, town infrastructure, roads and bridges, self-contained breathing apparatus, tennis courts, and I think there was also one for 4-H camp. In looking at all of the expenses that we have paid with that ARPA funds, the only one on that list is the breathing apparatus. The last meeting that was on January 19th, the Board of Selectmen approved a new Freightliner dump truck for $242,000 and also a tanker replacement truck for $270,000, I think as well. We have a sports utility vehicle for a town business on the docket to pay. I guess this is where I'm coming from a citizen. Are we really looking at improving things that, and listening to our community when we are having these discussions with you, and we're telling you what we want, and we're spending things on things that weren't even on the list from a town perspective from what the community needs were for ARPA funds. And that's where the trust comes into play when we're talking about repealing Prop 46. For me is, do I trust that we can hold together our finances if you don't have that in place? So that's one comment question. And then I guess for the amending the ARPA funds, you had indicated that that needs to come to the selectmen. So is that something that a person has to go to the Board of Selectmen to put on the docket for discussion to get on a town vote, or how can we make amendments to that specifically?
I can probably answer ARPA. But
No, my question's on Prop 46.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, I meant Prop 46.
Oh, okay, I'm
sorry. ARPA's done, right? You've spent almost all the money. That's done.
mostly on all public safety, and it was a lot more than what you've read. I haven't had much time to update.
I have the whole minutes from the first phase that was paid.
What do you have?
I have that you spent $500,000 on emergency communications.
Yep.
There was self-contained breathing apparatus, which I talked about, was for 108.
Yep.
Tree removal for 120,000. HVAC for town hall, 95,000. Reconstruction of Lebanon Hill Road, 125. Muddy Brook safety equipment, high pressure airbag for 42,000. $75,000 for town administrative costs. 20,000 for materials and supplies. 9,000 for a Woodstock dive team. 30,000 for a sports utility vehicle. 15,000 for IT server upgrades, and Bungie fire repair to a UTV of 21,000. And then phase 2 had a number of things that were listed, like Roseland Park, the rec fields, Teague, etc. And on the meeting on the 19th, what was approved was the tanker truck and the dump truck, and possibly, I think the item on that page was that you're still looking at possible town hall alarm system, Woodstock elementary PA system, and Quonset school repairs, and upgrading the town hall phone system. So I think I got the full list, unless there's not something.
And I would like to have a chance to speak on that too. So technically, the ARPA funds that the town received was considered revenue loss under the final rule, which was dated January 6th of 2022. So the Board of Selectmen chose to use the standard allowance under that rule to be able to continue to provide general government services to the community. So our Board of Selectmen felt that the best way that most people in the community would benefit is public safety. A majority of those expenses are public safety. I wish I had, maybe I could have somebody from fire and EMS come up and explain the radio system and why we spent the money to upgrade those communications. But also people should know that our town hall is also considered an emergency shelter. We had some issues with our HVAC system, so it needed to be upgraded. Some of the units in the ceiling were as original as when the building was built over 30 years ago. As far as some of the breathing apparatus, I believe that the Muddy Brook and the volunteers already had specific Scott's breathing apparatus machines, so we had to purchase them for Bungie so they could be compatible. But I will also ask other people from that service to come up here and talk. As far as like Roseland Park and rec fields, I received a majority of the emails, and a majority of the emails were not just for Roseland Park or fields, they were for fire, EMS, they were for roads, and to repair Lebanon Hill Road was a safety issue. That road was beyond impairable. I think I have John Navarro from the Highway Department here who can get up and attest to the conditions of that road, and there was not enough money in the budget to fund that project. As far as administrative services, that is to pay staff for the additional hours that they have put in to manage this program. It is a very extensive program. A lot of learning needed to be done, a lot of webinars, a lot of additional time above and beyond our regular work schedule. That is supposed to last throughout this project, which is a 5-year performance period. The school also did get their own ARPA funding, and we are helping them. They came to us with an emergency PA system at the elementary school. The selectmen, because of public safety and for the safety of the kids in the school, allowed them to go out to bid and bring those bids to us and choose which bid would be most beneficial and allotted them the funding. And this funding is not just approved by the Board of Selectmen. It has to go to the Board of Finance for final approval to relieve, the funding. It's the selectmen who did look at all of the emails that had come in on different suggestions, and they felt that the best possible use of funds because of a pandemic is public safety. Roseland Park is private. It is not a town service, it's a private park. And that is something that we would consider helping them with if there's funding left over. It wasn't wiped off the slate as it was not considered an important part of our community. But $2.3 million does not go far when you have a $25 million budget and you can't even make that with your programs. So that is why some of the reasons we've spent the money on what Sherry was mentioning. A lot of these services were from Muddy Brook. I don't know if people here know that if you get into a car accident and somebody is stuck, they need an airbag to lift the car to save somebody's life. Theirs was expired and needed to be replaced. It was $42,000. How do you, when public safety members come to you and they don't have funding to provide the proper materials or supplies or equipment to save someone's life, how do you tell them no? Do I have anybody here from the fire or EMS that would like to come up and finish fulfilling why we did some of those services? I don't know. But if anybody has any other ARPA questions, my email directly is my name, Karen Fitzpatrick, at woodstockct.gov. Feel free to email me so that we can, I can get back to any other questions that you have. But the ARPA funds has nothing to do with Prop 46. We cannot use it to fund pensions or to pay debt or to put in a rainy day fund. It was supposed to be used for public safety and the mitigation and things of a pandemic, not just what everybody's wishes were.
Can I clarify that?
Yes.
Sorry, I'll be quick. To Sherry's question, I just had one thing to consider when you're talking about Prop 46 and removing the academy out from that number. If you're thinking of an amendment or how to do that, I would ask that you consider not just increases, but the whole number. If it's just increases, that doesn't help us in the near term and probably won't help us in the long term. I would suggest that if something like that is possible or on somebody's mind, you consider all of it, not just the increases from here on out. And there's some specific wording in there. I think you'd want to consider. I'll just say personally, I'm in favor of getting rid of Proposition 46, because remember, you still get to vote on the budget, and then the town gets to vote on the budget. It's not saying Prop 46 is gone, spending gone wild. The town still gets to vote on every budget. And remember that too.
Sure.
My name's Jeremy. Obviously, nobody likes to hear about cuts, and I'm new to all this. I'm new to this town about 5 years ago, but cuts are a one-way street as far as I'm concerned. We cut things, and getting them back is going to be nearly impossible, and it does seem like getting rid of Proposition 46, which seems probably like the greatest idea, is going to be an uphill battle just with a vote among the people in this town. So amending it seems to be the most logical solution. It's something that we can sell, we can tell people what it's about and why we're doing it, explain things a little bit more, and everybody thinks I'm my wife here because we moved to Woodstock because the schools are so good. It is, it's just what people think of this area, and we care about our kids and we're gonna raise them right one way or the other, but we don't know what it's gonna take to amend Proposition 46. What's the time frame look like? Do we need to make cuts before, or can we get an amendment going right now? How many signatures do we need? How long before it gets voted on? I think in order to work on that, we need to come up with a time frame or just be aware of what a timeline looks like, start to finish, to get something like that moved around. And if we do need more time and more money before making cuts, we have these bonds I had heard about. I don't know if we can loan against those bonds or anything like that, but obviously you guys are taking everything into account, and I appreciate everybody's time up there. We picked you, so we obviously trust you some sort, so that's about it.
Thank you. Glenn?
Good evening. I'm Glenn Leslie. I'd like to thank everyone here up on the stage and everyone else that came this evening. And my question is specifically to the Board of Finance Chair. The group that I'm involved with prepared this yellow sheet, and we made some projections on the budget for next year. We tried to get the best numbers that we could, and I'd like to ask if Mike could just kind of confirm that the deficit under Prop 46, if we do continue with it, would be $951,000. And if you could also, can you give us some background on how he thinks we got here? What happened that brought us to this point? I think it would be great to let him, give us some background.
Mike?
Well, as far as the numbers go, where that lies right now is that's a moving target. We don't have any confirmed numbers at this time, but as to where we got to where we are, it is my opinion that because of the fact that the budget has been limited as it has in the past, that we have not even been able to keep up with inflation. If you go back for the last 10 years, the cumulative rate for inflation added together is 29.27%. In that same time period, our budget was increased by 21.17%. So we're not even keeping up with the standard cost of living. I'm sure you've all got your latest electricity bills. I just got mine today. My usage actually dropped by 4.2%, but the cost went up by 43.8%. That, much like the bills the town has to pay, are something that we have no control over. And something definitely needs to be done, but without the support of all you people out there, we have nowhere to go, because we cannot spend more than what Prop 46 allows, and with the restrictions that are on it at this time, I think we're going in a deeper hole. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, Reed Chamberlain. So I'm late to the party, as a lot of us seem to be. You guys are, clearly at a point of frustration, and I've been attending some of the Board of Ed meetings for quite a while and hearing that frustration. But there's more of an appetite at the moment because of the alarm that's been raised to revisit Prop 46 and start the process on our end as the citizens to make some forward progress here. But what we would need to continue the conversation, especially in some of the strongholds, is what is it going to take to pay the bills? We hear where we're at, we get that, we acknowledge it, we know we're in hard times, but for the education side, what do you need to put those people back in the classroom? What do you need to take care of our students and our kids? And then on the downside, what do you need to keep the infrastructure in place to, one, meet the law, and two, put us where we should be in our standing within our state?
You had a wish list.
Well, as far as the wish list is we want to keep what we have right now, because sliding backwards from where we are right now would just be so difficult. And we want to try to give our students the opportunities so that they can succeed moving forward. Right now, our students pay $250 a student per sport. So if you are a middle school athlete that wants to participate in cross country, basketball, and baseball, you're going to be paying, 250 times 3, $750, almost $1,000 a year just to play in sports. We'd like to add back in little things like that other districts just take for granted. What else do we need? I'd love to have a librarian at the Woodstock Elementary School, at the Woodstock Middle School. That's not a wish list item, that's just something that we used to have that we just take for granted that we're not going to get back each and every year. So our wish list is that we need to be funded at a level that keeps us competitive, and right now we aren't able to because we spend about $3,000 less than the state average. That's the state average for K through 12. When you look at where we are pre-K to 8, we are much below the state average for within Windham County and the state of Connecticut. So we just want to give our kids the opportunity, and we can cut things. If you want to cut your school counselors, and let families try to find their own solutions to mental health problems. We have 2 nurses. There are districts around the country that just have 1 nurse for the entire district. Do we want to take that chance? Do we want to cut back on our custodians? Do we want to further cut back on our maintenance? Woodstock Elementary School was built in 1950. It is an old building. We need to do some maintenance and repair on that building. It was built with tunnels. We have tunnels that need to be cleaned up and sealed. Those have been on our capital plan for the last decade or so. So we have a lot of needs that may seem like they're frivolous, but they're essential to keeping a good quality school system running. And we can't afford to slide back anymore because it's just affecting you as a community, and we just need to try to keep up. And like Mike said, being that far below the cost of living is really difficult for us to provide the programming we need when we are so far away from our target. So.
If I can add just a little bit to that too. It makes me cringe to hear a little bit about a wish list, because these shouldn't be things we're wishing for, first of all. Second, for a more detailed answer to your question, I might butcher the date. I believe it's March 7th, where the school puts its budget proposal to the Board of Finance, and that will have what we think we need to keep where we are now.
It's actually
And March 14th this year, thank you. I kind of figured I'd get it wrong. So we'll have the budget there, which will say what we think we need. If you're asking the bigger question of how do we get back to an average funding and have an average school, that is going to be more money. That is going to be an increase in taxes. Anybody that says it's not knows magic, I don't know. The trick is, I think, to do it reasonably and to do it slowly. You're not going to get there tomorrow. It's not going to be, hey, Prop 46 is gone, up your taxes by 30%, let's rock. It's not going to happen. It's going to be small incremental steps that I think is the way it has to go, and do it intelligently. And I hate to pick on Sherry again, but back to her point, we need to do it transparently, and we need to do it openly, so everyone sees what we're doing and how we're trying to get there to keep that trust with the community. It's not just open the checkbook and let's go. I'd love to do that. It's not reasonable. It's not good for I think, trust. So it's got to be slow. But if you come and you see the budget presentation, what we do every year is we put in what we think we need to stay where we are, or maybe make a small incremental step to get back some of what we lost last year. And again, it's not wishes, it's stuff we need to do. So, if that answers it maybe a little more fully.
Yeah, and just to add, I think what we're trying to do as far as a community group is, when we're having discussions about what we want to put in for that amendment, or what is going to control, and how big of a hole are we in? Everybody's talking about, this is where we are to pay the bills we have today. We talked about how far we've slid. So we're just trying to gauge what kind of an impact and how to frame that to bring back to you guys.
So absolutely, and I think coming to that budget presentation is very helpful. Ballpark numbers I keep in my mind is look where our per pupil spending is K through 8, multiply it by our number of students. That's where you'd be to get to average funding for the state of Connecticut. That might be a good place to start looking. And again, I might compare it to Windham County instead. I might compare it to other similarly situated schools. I don't want to compare our spending to a Hartford or to a big city spending that has completely different issues than we have. Okay. So you might look at similarly situated and see what that looks like. And I think that's probably a good start. Michelle might have better number stuff.
No, I don't actually have better numbers. But what I wanted to add to that is hard to monetize, like you're asking us to monetize how big the hole is, because no one's really kept track of the dollar value of those losses over the year. We're kind of at a qualitative analysis right now of it. But I do want to say, like, I feel from this is my perspective. I used to be on the Board of Education. I'm now on the Board of Finance. I feel like we're at a pivotal point now where we can turn things around, but it's not going to be a panacea. It's something that's going to take time and effort and support from the community to fix going forward over the next 5, 6, 7 years. But if we don't do something now, what it's going to look like in 5, 6, 7 years is not a good place, because as Mike said, that the ordinance can't keep up with inflation, and we're already backsliding. And if we don't backstop it now, then the consequences of that, not to be an alarmist, as Victor said, they're not good. So that's all I wanted to add to it.
Thank you, Michelle. Megan, let me just, to some of the folks who haven't had a chance to.
As I tell my students, I'm fun-sized candy bar. Lindsay Belisario. I am a almost lifelong Woodstock community person. Lived here, went through the Woodstock public school systems, and I remember my parents coming to meetings when budget was always a problem, and so I know it's nothing new. I'm a parent of a middle schooler, and I remember every time the things would get voted down to try to get a middle school. I remember when we were pre-K through 8th grade, superintendent's office and everything at what was the elementary school, being in portable classrooms. And I've seen how things can change for positive. We have a middle school now. That's a positive. I've seen how this campus has also changed over that time as well. When it was Hyde School, we had wonderful agreements with Hyde and being able to come over here for performances. And now that it is the private venue of Woodstock Academy, I know what they charge. So my question tonight is, or I guess I have two, are they charging us to use this tonight? And if they are, what are they charging us?
Once again, hey Jay. I don't know. I believe it, seriously, I believe in being honest. Whatever arrangement is made with the school for various shows, concerts, and that sort of thing is one thing. My dealings in finding this venue for tonight, you know, we never discussed money. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
I'll answer more of the question. So, being the city town rep to the academy, when we didn't have a contract, when we just didn't have one, you know, for whatever the reasons were that we, you know, were discussing different high school options and different things of that nature. For the past year, we did not have a contract with the academy, and the academy then, when was approached to have different types of functions, whether it was track, functions here or whatever, because we were under negotiations of those contract obligations, we had to kind of come up with a monetary process as to what those fees were going to be. Part of that, with having a contractual obligation with the academy and having representation on their board, and also having a relationship with staff and security MOUs and all sorts of stuff, that goes along with having that relationship with the academy. And that was solved this year when we actually got the contract renewed and signed. So tonight is a zero, except for the expenses that the academy has for having it open. But as far as us as a town in the school budget, it's no charge to me.
Megan?
I have to do what Lindsay does. I'm not done. This question is actually for the Board of Finance, and you know, Mike on the hot seat or anybody up there. I just wanted to hear more about the where we are funding wise. So I know we're in a tough place. We've heard that we're in a pivotal, gotta put the glasses back on, moment. But how close are we to not being able to meet or continue to meet our state mandated and federal mandated requirements? If it stays as it is, if the $229,000 for the increase to Woodstock Academy is taken out, if that's an exemption. If the $262,000 for EMS is taken out as an exemption, does that help us? But how far away are we? I know the Board of Finance has dipped in to, I don't remember the proper name, the Rainy Day Fund, to help alleviate the burden on the taxpayers, and we can't do that anymore because it risks our ability to borrow. But just, where are we? I mean, are we getting close? If we continue down this path, like, are we gonna be up against violating state statute? Never mind Proposition 46. Like, where are we?
We're still figuring that out.
As Karen just said to me when I walked by, we're still trying to figure that out as to what we're going to have for revenue. But as far as any one particular thing, saving everything else, that's not going to happen. It's going to take quite a bit in cuts the further we go without doing something. The deeper the cuts are going to be. As I said before, it's a hole that we're in, and every year we just get in there and take a few more shovels full out. That's the way it started. Now we're in there with an excavator, and we're taking scoops out and just tossing it aside. We're not keeping up. We just can't possibly do it. So something major has to change. But again, as I said, we are limited to what we can do based on the revenue that we have, and even if we had the additional revenue, if it didn't fit within the Proposition 46 formula, we wouldn't be allowed to spend it. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Mike.
Sir, my name is Travis Blair. I've been a resident here in Woodstock since 1988. Gone through the school systems. I have a child in the school system, so very in depth into the town as it sits. Just wanted to reference back to Karen's discussion. Any of the fire department purchases that were made with ARPA funds, by and large, all capital projects, those are things that are at a minimum 10-year lifespans, if not upwards of 25 to 30. So the reasoning for spending the large amount of money on some of the things like our tanker, which is 35 years old. At 20 years, we're supposed to have these recertified. We've prolonged that for so many years that the necessity for these items has become a need, and that's what the ARPA funds were kind of derived for to help us. So thank you, Karen, for that. It was a challenging thing to determine what should be spent or bought, and we worked back and forth very closely. It was good for all the emergency services in town. I just have a quick point to make, or a question, I suppose. Prop 46. How many towns in the state of Connecticut have something like Prop 46? And how well is that working for those?
I think nobody but us.
So for clarification for everybody, answer is one town, and it's us. And does that not alarm anybody that we're the only ones doing it and seem to have this growing hole that is continuing to grow, bound by this Prop 46 situation? Understandably, we need to kind of take a deeper look at that for those that are somewhat on the fence with Prop 46. So, just a point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
I said I wasn't going to talk tonight. I lied.
That's true. You did say that.
So I just want to actually talk about the one town. There are other states, like our neighbors to the north, Massachusetts, that have a limit called it's called Prop 2.5. And the difference, it's a spending limit on municipal taxation, just like our Proposition 46. But the difference between that and what we have is that is a statewide proposition. So when the state hands out its funding, it's within the context of their spending, of the municipal spending limit in the Prop 2.5. So when the state's making funding decisions, that's part of their funding decision. When our state's making funding decisions, they don't care that we have a spending limit. They don't care. When we go into collective bargaining, they don't care. They don't care because we choose as a community to do this and to live by this. And it makes a difference because we are unique. So I just wanted to point that out, that the other considerations that are made for our funding are that Proposition 46 is never taken into consideration.
Thanks, Michelle. Peter?
My name is Peter Green. I am a lifelong resident of Woodstock, and lifelong, I have to qualify that. My family only settled here in the late 70s. I know there are generations of Woodstockians, but I've had the privilege of raising my family in this community. Get choked up. We moved here because Woodstock seemed like heaven when we moved here. Bucolic, just a nice, quaint village, community of villages and small libraries and a small high school when we got here, and so that was a good decision on my family's part. What I'm hearing tonight is the citizenry of Woodstock needs to take ownership of what we want this town to be, and how we move forward in terms of creating a vision to turn things around, because I'm hearing a very bleak picture, okay? It's obvious, whether we're going down a deep hole, however you want to term it, I see no alternative other than amending or repealing Prop 46. It's the big elephant in this room. It's the thing people don't want to take a position on, and we've got to tackle it head on. I don't know if amending it or repealing it is the answer. I know status quo, trying to live within further cuts that become more regressive the farther we move into the future. That ain't no answer. I can tell you that right now. Things are gonna decline, erode. It's like fixing a muffler by, wiring it to the bottom of a car. It's not going to last. And so I think my question is, thank you for allowing me to make some commentary. I think this yellow sheet that many of you have in the audience is a pretty good synopsis, at least understandable to me. I must confess, I'm new to town politics, town government, even though I've worked at Woodstock Academy for 37 years. I was kind of removed from engaging in town politics at all. Now I'm back, retired, but I do have 5 grandchildren headed toward K through 8 education, and they're important to me. But I'm hearing tonight from all you folks, and I applaud you for serving the way you do. What I'm hearing is that we have to get it together and move things forward. I do want, in my mind, what is the upside of repealing or amending Prop 46? Is there a downside? The big downside of doing nothing? That's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, how much more clarity does there have to be other than some of the data on this sheet, even if it's an approximation? Yes, we're going to feel pain. Many of us are going to feel pain because we would have to dig deeper in our pockets in terms of tax revenue. I understand that. I understand this community is a mosaic of a lot of different income levels, people living from paycheck to paycheck. You know what I'm saying. There's a lot of different socioeconomic stratas in this community. I understand that. I understand it's going to hurt some people much more than it's going to hurt me. But we've got to move forward. It's a problem. We can't live with it any longer. This ordinance may have been developed and calibrated or voted on in 1979, and somebody thought it was a great idea to kind of calibrate growth in grand list with growth in town budget. It's not working. That's why we're here, because it's not working any longer. We lost, Data General, we lost some other big employers in town. I'm spacing out a little. We haven't kept pace with inflationary costs. There are some things have changed in 43 years, okay? Town services, we know fire and ambulance services, which got people's attention pretty quickly. They're moving. I remember the days when, and thank God for the volunteers in that era, in the current era. Raising money to self-fund the ambulance and fire services in this community. Those days are coming to an end if they haven't started already. And so what am I saying? Somehow we've got to buck up and tackle either an amendment or a repeal to Prop 46. You got to search, you know. I don't think there is no other. There are no other good alternatives, unless somebody thinks they've got, you know, really big benefactors. With that said, and maybe I didn't say everything clearly, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. I want things to work for this community. I don't want to see us divided and contentious over infighting between town services, general town services, and educational services, and who gets a piece of the diminishing pie. That's not a good, healthy thing for a community like us. We've got to pull it together and work together, it's the only thing that's going to help us move forward. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to say thank you to the members of the boards who work tirelessly and perennially on this problem. My name is Paula Wilma. I've lived in Woodstock for 12 years. I have a 13-year-old and a 9.5-year-old. You know, at the last presentation, I was moved by the EMS presentation where they shared with us that yes, we want a timely response for our loved ones should they be in an emergency or a life-threatening medical situation. And agreed, right? We don't want to have to choose between that and education. And I thought I was going to have to remind us that our loved ones are in the classroom on both sides of the desks. But I think I hear that people are quite aware of that. And so I'm really, really pleased. Each year, how this looks for our family is each year you all start in November or probably even earlier gathering these numbers. I start sitting with you in March. And each year in March, I listen to Victor and, you know, I call you all the magicians, trying to figure out what could we say we're gonna cut and then get people's attention and then what can we actually cut and try to keep doing the best for our kids. In 2014, our son was eligible for pre-K, and I remember that year was, well, we need to cut pre-K and we might have to cut the nurse's clerk. So that was interesting, right? So I was listening and I was just starting to get a taste. And then in 2017, when our daughter was eligible for full-time kindergarten, it was full-time kindergarten. And this working mother was having a panic attack. I was like, I gotta look for school in Southbridge or what? Because, you know, like we were looking for inexpensive, relatively inexpensive private school at that point, because she couldn't go to school here if that was gonna happen. It didn't happen, and that's why I refer to you as the magicians. Because you caught all the things that Victor talked about earlier, and I wrote them all down, and they were all very sad. But I appreciate the magic that you do. So I think we can agree that we don't want to be in scarcity forever. That's what I hear. And so if we don't want to be in scarcity forever, and if we do want to say that we appreciate having town roads that work, and we appreciate having a government and all of this, then we do need to do something that addresses the town altogether. And it does sound like we need to amend or repeal Proposition 46. My question is it true that you really only need 25 signatures on this petition? Is that true? I think that's true.
I think that is to bring them down.
So like we should sign it tonight. Thank you.
Crystal, do you have some questions from people?
I do. We have 87 people watching on YouTube right now, and I was emailed a question from David Murphy. He said, money is not the only factor. Every urban center in the state spends much more per student. We don't want to look like urban centers. Please address what the percentage drop in the K-8 enrollment over the last 10 years and where the funds from fewer students are being spent. And why has these savings not had a positive impact on test scores?
Yes, it's true that our enrollment, like all enrollment across the state and across the country, is dropping. And you've seen those drops in enrollment across the state of Connecticut, and the increases in the costs that are compounded on the school districts don't go down because the cost of everything that you've seen has gone up. So while we have made losses in enrollment, our ability to provide the services has remained well below the state average. So our growth in our costs, I'll be blunt with you, have gone to your high school costs. And that's where you have the disparity. Last year we had a disparity of about $5,000 per student from your high school students to your K-8 students. That's unacceptable. The average for a high school student and for a K-8 student of a medium-sized high school, medium-sized elementary, middle, should be about even. So we have stayed below that average. We have lost enrollment, but most of our costs have gone to the high school level in order for them to maintain and improve their services while we have made losses. That's about as clear as I can be.
Thank you, Victor. Lindsay, just before, I think somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Keith?
Good evening, all. Nice to see you after the 3 years of the COVID and the pandemic. I'm Keith O'Hara, and I just wanted to tell you 3 things. My taxes, our family taxes, are an investment. We invest in first responders because they matter. We pay taxes and invest in librarians because literacy and child literacy matters. We pay taxes and invest in education because children matter, because teachers matter, and those 3, our first responders, our librarians who see after the culture and the literacy of our village, and our teachers and educators matter. We have to stop thinking of taxes in the old Yankee way. Now remember, Yankee wisdom cuts 2 ways. 1, if I get everything for free, I'm the smartest man in the room. On the other hand of Yankee wisdom is, you don't get nothing for nothing. And so I'm here to say, repeal, go into the 21st century, pay what we have to pay, get us to a benchmark that is at least 50% of our 169 peer towns, and let's go forward. My last comment. Turkey is hard. Syria is hard. Ukraine is hard. Paying a fair share is not hard.
I'm back. Lindsay Belisario again. And I will be happy more to discuss this at the Board of Ed meeting coming up, but I have had confirmation that the Academy is not zero for Woodstock Public School Systems, that we do pay to use this. So as the chairman and as the liaison, I ask you to, before the next Board of Ed meeting, please just double check that contract. I would be more than happy to hear I am wrong. But I know not everybody will be attending the Board of Ed meeting, so I think it's important that people here tonight hear that.
Good evening. My name is Matt McCabe. I'm relatively green to the town of Woodstock compared to some of you. Moved here in 2016, so 6 years, give or take. I guess I'd like to reiterate what others have said, and that's to say thank you very much for all the time that you put in on a monthly basis here to the Board of Finance, the town selectmen, and of course, Board of Education. And I would really be remiss if I didn't say also to the first responders, dedicated first responders here in our town as well, within the 3 entities that we have. Brevity is appreciated in a forum like this, so I have just a couple of quick questions. I did reach out to the town, spoke to a couple of folks. I myself got sidetracked with my work, didn't have time to follow up with the clerk's office, but just a couple of quick questions. 44 years Prop 46 has been in place since 1979, is my understanding. With that said, how many times has it come to referendum? I'm wondering if anybody here in this room knows. Number 2, I'd like to know the breakdown of when it's come to referendum. How many times was it proposed to be abolished? How many times was it proposed to be amended? And then what was the breakdown of margins on yeas versus nays? Just being in town for 6 years, I don't know. I don't have that history here. And just also wanted to ask, last question, has anybody at this point brought a petition to the town for those 25 glorious signatures that we've discussed? So thank you very much.
I think that those are valuable questions for, I'm sorry. I think those are great questions for our town clerk because she keeps all the records on referendums and stuff like that. I don't know if she's here this evening. She's not here. I'm not sure if she's in the audience, but she would be the best person to get you those statistics. And I can tell you, as far as I know, nothing's been brought forward yet to the town.
Thank you. Matt, just to clarify, and the question about Proposition 46 and a petition, Michelle is somebody to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as with the inception of Proposition 46, I think its origins were, not only was it a petition to the town, but the people who wanted to bring that forward had the ordinance drafted. And then they present that to the town, and then the town acts upon a request like that. They typically would have it reviewed by the town attorney to make sure the request or the proposed ordinance is legal with respect to form and content, and then it gets moved forward through the approval process, through town meeting, referendum vote. So I don't think it's just so there's not a misunderstanding of everybody in the room here signed a petition tonight. That's not going to really start the process. I think it probably has to people have to sit down, as in the past, I think, and prepare a proposed ordinance, whether it's an ordinance to repeal or an ordinance to amend, and then bring that forward to the Board of Selectmen.
Hi, Jessica Weaver-Boos, lived in town off and on for my life. My question to move us forward a little bit is, say Prop 46 was repealed, what would become the budget process? And what becomes how citizens still have a say in it? Just to assuage some fears.
If in fact it was repealed, nothing would change except that the cap that we currently have would go away. If it was amended, then of course it would be based on whatever the amendment was. But the standard budget process is the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, both come up with a budget, they bring it to the Board of Finance, the Board of Finance looks at it, and it's our statutory obligation to recommend to the voters a reasonable budget. So the Board of Finance would then recommend that budget. We have a public hearing before we actually make our final decision with the Board of Finance. And then it would go to a town meeting, and past history has always been at the town meeting to move that to referendum, which is generally shortly right after the town meeting. But you people out there, you're the ones that have the control. You're the ones that say we buy it or we don't. And generally what happened before, was when a budget was recommended by the Board of Finance, and this is the only thing that would really change, is that if we recommended a budget and it was at the maximum of Prop 46, and you turned it down, we had nowhere to go but down and put it out again. Now, we would have to have a question on the ballot to say, did you vote yes or no for the purpose that the education budget was too high, or the town budget was too high, or one was too high, one was too low, so that we would have a guideline as to where to go from there. Because if we just throw a recommended budget out there, and we could in fact go higher or lower, without your input again, we have no way of knowing. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mike.
Evening, my name is Ian Webster, and I have a clarifying point from this flyer that was created by the town clerk. Actually, it looks like we need 20 signatures for that petition, unless I'm misreading this. But then also, I just wanted clarification. It looks like we could kind of end this meeting potentially if the selectman was willing to call a town meeting asking to either amend or abolish Prop 46.
Just when I'm getting comfortable. What would have to happen, this has happened in the past, if a petition for any reason has to be presented to the Board of Selectmen, somebody would come to my office, present it to me, I would present to the board. The next step is I have to meet with the town attorney to find out if it's valid. Prior to that, it would have to go through the town clerk to find out if the people that have signed the petition are valid electors, residents, et cetera, and then the town attorney would determine, is this something that should move forward? If he determines that it does, then it would go to eventually a town meeting, which would adjourn to a referendum and a vote. So that's how the process works.
I was just reading what it said. It says one, which to call, what your responsibility is.
Well,
so you could call a town meeting.
Does that agree with what I just said?
No.
Okay.
I think what Ian's asking, and I don't know. Are you asking to? No,
I'm willing to share.
I think what Ian's asking is if the selectmen can put this question to a referendum on your own without there being a petition. I think that's what he's trying to.
Correct.
No, it would have to be a petition, because the selectmen are not in a position to make decisions about what is best for the town. We would respond to the citizens via petition to us. And then, as I said, it would go to town clerk for verification, town attorney to determine if it's appropriate to move forward. We would go to town meeting, we would warn the town meeting. At the town meeting, we would adjourn to a referendum, and all these dates would be set. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
John Gomez again. So, I'm a little confused by that. I know you laid it out straight, but where is it so written that that is the process? Because I was under the impression, as Ian just said, that indeed the selectman could call. It's not as if you're making a decision, you're simply calling for, for input. So that wasn't why I came up here, but I heard that and I'm a little confused by it. So where would I find that?
I've been wrong many times before, but my understanding of the way the law works is that when there's an amendment in place, and if the town wants to repeal that amendment, repeal that ordinance rather, which is what Proposition 46 is, somebody has to bring forward an ordinance repealing that ordinance, and it gets adopted just like the original ordinance would. It's not a matter of getting a petition signed by 100 people and you say it's gone, because that's not the way you want to do an existing ordinance.
Right, but there would still be, okay. I think I've got it now. Thank you, I appreciate that. I had two really quick things. First of all, I think somebody mentioned earlier transparency. I think that's really important
I don't mean to always be the snarky guy up here. I really don't, but somebody has to sometimes. I think it's important when we do contact the Board of Selectmen or whatever other board it may be, that we understand and that we can walk away from that and knowing that, hey, that's an idea, we can work on it and we're gonna look into it, or, you know, that's, sorry, we can't do anything about that for these reasons. So I think it's really important. And for the most part, I think y'all are doing that. But I think it's real important that we do get that kind of feedback, because otherwise, people do feel that we need something like a Prop 46 because we don't feel that we really have a voice. But I mean, clearly we do have that ability to vote for a budget. And how we got off track in 1979, I don't know. I was in high school, so I wasn't in Woodstock, so I don't know. But I just wanted to say one more thing. A lot of people have talked about, you know, let's get something started. And, you know, a really wonderful person once said, you know, if the people lead, the leaders will follow. So before I go home tonight, I'd really like to know if anybody wants to stick around later, if you've already got a group working on this, if you're putting, you know, ideas together, let's start something tonight before we all head back home, and let's talk about it so that we can bring something to these good folks and do something about it. Because I'm going to sit around right up here, and hopefully, you know, some of you will talk to me about it. Okay, yes, sir. I'll be over there to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. Can I give, much like sports, but I'd like to give a 5-minute warning, because we were supposed to end at 8:30, but this lady looks like she would like to speak, so please. Oh, there's two.
That's why he gets the big bucks. He tells us the lights are going out.
Nice try, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm not attorney, she is not.
Go ahead.
Shannon Garcia. I'm a 6-year resident of
It's only
Woodstock.
7:37.
I grew up in Thompson, and I'll tell you, Woodstock was the town you wanted to be from. We looked up to Woodstock. This was a beautiful community, and I was so excited to get to start my own family here. And I hope I get to stay, but I'm concerned. And Prop 46 or no, I think we have bigger issues in town. We have a community problem. I guess I have 2 questions. One is, I don't even know if I want to volunteer if another citizen has a service they could help provide, or where would we even go to offer such a thing? And who do we speak to become involved? I mean, I don't even know. If I wanted to run a children's story time in town hall, how do I even go about asking to do something like that? So that's number 1. And then, again, we might still have Prop 46, so if we're gonna have to hunker down again, are citizens able to donate privately to the services they care about, or how is there a way to run certain of these services with more volunteers, or how do we empower people to actually go fix these problems instead of just hoping Prop 46 goes away and it all just goes away?
Is your question to volunteer, you mean to assist with the school system? Or?
Anything. If some people might have teaching experience, they want to volunteer with the schools. Some people might have experience in accounting, they can help. I don't know. But I wouldn't even know where to begin to start to volunteer in town. So, does anyone even... I'm very strong.
Hi, I'm Holly. I've been living here since '98, and I'm a lifelong volunteer. So I don't know about all the volunteer options, but when my children were young, I just went to the libraries and talked to librarians and started Storytime, volunteering to be the Storytime chairperson. I kind of got roped into the Board of Ed, but there's always positions on the boards, and that's usually typically through your Democratic or Republican parties, so you can start attending those meetings.
If we're not Democrats or Republicans? Is there an option?
Oh, I wasn't either, and I still got involved, so
okay.
People will find you. Just start attending the meetings. I started attending the Board of Ed meetings, and people started recognizing that might be someone that reach out to you when there is an election, and in the fall, there may be several positions open. So I would just say go to the town hall. I think Erin Fitzpatrick, when my children were younger, ran a toddler time at the town hall. So probably call the rec director, would that be the person there? So call the town hall, there may be somebody there, call the local libraries, call the schools, if there's any volunteer opportunities on the PTO, there's the Woodstock Ed Foundation that you can contact to volunteer through that organization that supports the schools as well. So there's a variety of ways, but you can start, I guess, there.
And we can, as citizens, donate privately to any town services, or is that
That's a little bit different. I think with the schools, you couldn't like say, oh, I'm gonna donate money to the schools, like I won the lottery and now I'm gonna solve the problem, because it can't go through the budget that way. So monies for the schools would have to be donated to PTO and the Woodstock Ed Foundation, and they have bylaws of how they can spend those funds. As far as the town, I'm not sure, maybe calling the selectman's office or somebody like that.
Okay,
Judy Nyland Foundation is another foundation in town.
But to actually donate directly to a service like the libraries,
I would contact the libraries, because each library has their own board, and so they run semi-public, privately. So each library in town has their own board, and you would contact them, and you could donate to libraries directly that way. I assume the EMS is, there's volunteers.
and does that mess up their budgets then? Like if they get too much help from the public, do they now get cuts from?
That's a complicated question. I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that one, but maybe. But all I can speak for is on the library, because I'm on one of the library boards as well, as they do their own fundraising for certain costs, and then the town supplements the other costs. So I don't think it necessarily hurts them.
So we could perhaps offset a little that way. So at least we can look into some.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Molly. The head umpire said that he misread the game clock. We actually have 45 minutes or more, so nobody has to leave right away.
And I think Travis Blair and I are going to speak about volunteering for fire services. I don't want to talk about this.
You nailed it, bud. Same message.
So a couple of quick things. I can't speak for Bungie or Moneybrook, but I know Woodstock volunteers are always looking. I'm sure the other two departments are. But we're not looking for firefighters or EMS. We have plenty of other things that anyone can help us with. Social media, we're big on social media now. Just knock on any of the fire department doors. We're always looking for donations. Everyone wants to donate. It helps us support some of the other things that we can't get through budgetary items. We're always looking for help. I will say that the volunteers last year probably volunteered over 12,000 man hours to the town. That's one fire department. That doesn't include Bungie or Moneybrook. And the reason why we're going to a paid EMS service now is because the criteria to become an EMT or EMR is such now that they're truly paid personnel that need to be paid properly. The volunteers, we just can't do everything that we're asked to do. So remember that's 12,000 volunteer man hours just from one of the 3 fire departments in this town. Travis can tag on if you like.
So just adding on to that, myself personally, I've got probably somewhere about 900 hours of personal training to become certified to do what I do. Fire 1, Fire 2, all the certifications I have to contribute in the department. A lot of people think, well, I can't do that. I can't give you 200 hours to become an EMT and 200 to become interior. And my answer is always, you don't need to, because for every hour you can take off my plate doing administrative work, grant writing, cleaning, helping around the station, volunteering at open houses, those are all hours I don't have to contribute there. And I can go and do my other things, more people can do that. So this goes for everybody online as well. This is very important. Our volunteerism in town, not just the fire departments, it's not just our town, it's nationwide. It's a pandemic. There's articles coming out about it left and right. It's all over the place. Anybody that can help in any way, even if it's a couple hours a month, doesn't matter. Come on in. We will use you for what we can use you for. There are people that don't like seeing blood. Terrific. We'll put you at a desk and you can write grants for us. So when we need to buy $40,000 worth of rescue equipment for our antiquated tools, we have somebody that can do that. And I don't have to spend 12 hours a week doing this. Do you know what I mean? So anybody that wants to contribute, there are plenty of avenues. The local libraries are huge like that. Go in and just read books to children. It doesn't matter. The community side of this is really what keeps Woodstock, Woodstock. And it was the education that we stayed here for. We know we have that as a hurdle, but we're going to overcome these things. But the community of it is what our community is, and it's very important that we maintain that. So please, if anybody has any time, even if it's just a little, we're always willing. Our doors are open. All 3 departments are online. We're on Facebook. We all have websites. You should know somebody on the fire department. Probably half this room is somehow involved with the fire department. So come on out. We're always doors open for us. So thank you.
I just wanted to get a clarification, and I'm going back in my way back brain, so it's fuzzy. At one point, I know that the Board of Education was considering different ways to generate revenue to help to increase funding for the schools, whether it be taking in substantial amount of tuition paying students if we could fit them in that sort of revenue generation, not the in-kind services or running programs. And what I remember is if we had generated that level of income, or if it had been generated a certain way, it doesn't mean that that revenue could be used for schools, because Proposition 46 still does limit the spending in town. So I can tell you just from my time on the Board of Ed, and I'm assuming from the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance as well, these boards have looked at different ways to generate revenue for the town and for these services. But their hands are tied as well because of the cap, the spending cap we have. So we could bring in a lot more revenue, but it doesn't necessarily equate to spending. Again, brain's a little fuzzy. I do see a lot of nodding yes up there, so I don't think it's too far gone. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Glenn?
Yes, hi everyone. I just want to address that there is a group that has been looking at this issue for the last several months. We have a number of members that are ex Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Education, and we've reached out to our community leaders to try to come up with some ideas and some plans. Obviously, we have a real financial hole here in town. We've lost revenue from some of our largest taxpayers, like Crabtree and Evelyn. Over the years, we have additional expenses on the way. We're losing education cost sharing grants, so we do have a significant hole. And as our Board of Finance Director pointed out, Prop 46 only allows the budget to, over the last 10 years, to have increased by 2.17%, while inflation has been over 2.7. So it's pretty obvious that we have a real financial issue. And we do have some plans, and I'd like to introduce 2 other members of our group to speak. Ms. Lindsay Ball.
Hi. I think we've pretty well established here, and I'm only hearing agreement that the town has not been well served by Prop 46 through the years. We have, in the yellow handout that you have, that was prepared by friends of the town, but validated from board minutes and discussions with our Board of Finance and with the Board of Ed. You can see what the anticipated effect will be this year in a do-nothing scenario. And it looks like we're going to be asking we're going to be running a deficit of about $950,000. We would traditionally, we ask the Board of Ed to eat 80% of that. We'd be asking Victor to make an additional $760,000 in cuts on top of everything that we have already heard that the school has lost. We would be asking the town to eat about $190,000 in cuts. I don't know where they go with that. There's been discussion of, well, how about an amendment on it? And we took a look at what the economics would be if we proposed an amendment that would add additional exemptions to the limitation. We already have exemptions of transportation and special ed, emergency expenditures, I think. If we added to that some of the things that have been mentioned tonight, which is the increase in Woodstock Academy tuition, the increase in fire and the EMS services, we would still be looking at a deficit of $447,000 that would have to be split between the Board of Ed and the town. This would be asking Victor to take another almost $358,000 out of the budget, the as-is budget, not the one that looks to restore anything. And furthermore, it doesn't address the long-term issues that we have, that we know we are losing education cost sharing. We know we're going to need to fund our fire department more. We would propose that this town take a look at repealing this ordinance of 43 years old, that we would act like every other town in Connecticut, which goes through a budget process and asks its citizens to look at what the education system and the town is looking for, our Board of Finance to then vet that for what it thinks is palatable and what the town can afford, and then the townspeople to come up and vote the budget up or down, just as every other town does. I don't know why we would ask the voters of 43 years ago to control the budget today. Don't we want the voters and the citizens of today to do that? So, we do have a petition voting. You are welcome to add your names. It commits you to nothing, but it would allow us to move forward. The petition is worded as a repeal. It will allow us to hold other forums, hear other ideas. So, look for you to come and join us.
Excuse me, the Board of Selectmen hosted the community forum some weeks ago across the street. This is part 2 in response to requests. None of these 3 boards made any presentations tonight. I would ask that it not be presentation. We already explained if a petition comes forward, and you can check with the town clerk about the process for going to Board of Selectmen, town attorney, town meeting, referendum. But the issue is, we have a limited time here. None of us have made a presentation. And I would ask that no presentations be made. There's a gentleman at the end of this line that I haven't heard from. Other folks in this line have spoken, have asked questions and that sort of thing. And I certainly don't mean to be impolite, but
But you are being impolite.
I am not surprised. I'm going to turn this back to the moderator.
Actually, I'd like to say something. Jay, I don't understand the defensiveness and combativeness of your tone. I think that the citizens, you all, requested feedback from the townspeople. They're here. They're expressing themselves reasonably, articulately, passionately, and I think they deserve a right to speak.
The issue is thank you. The issue that I was trying to point out is none of these 3 boards made any presentations tonight. This was simply a forum, a continuation to what had occurred across the street 3 weeks ago. And I was hoping that this was open to the public to have input from the public. And I understand that this is input. I understand that. But it's bearing on a presentation. I think it might be premature. But again, I may, God knows I'm wrong frequently enough. So I'm going to go back to the moderator. And again, apologies if you feel I'm being impolite.
Okay, sir. My name's Don Charzan. I've been here pretty much my
entire life. I love Woodstock. I love our rural culture. We have great neighbors, and I'm fortunate to be a member of the Woodstock Volunteer Fire Department since 2005 as an EMT. What scares me, and I think you're going to be scaring a lot of people, is as an EMT, we see all aspects of life, both the people that are well off and there are people that are having difficulties making things equal every month. If you, in my opinion, if you go to appeal Prop 46, like the past, it's going to fail. I advise you or recommend that you start off small, amend it, see how that goes, then build upon the amendment for Prop 46. I agree that Prop 46 needs to be amended, but I don't think it'll pass a total cancellation of Prop 46.
Thank you, Don. Just want to say something.
Yeah, the two processes aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, we're talking about different, solutions here, and both those processes could be happening at the same time. The one thing that probably is going to help out faster is amending it, because I think it's a shorter process than repealing it. And in terms of going through and trying to see where the sympathy is with the town, the amendment process, just like the individual said earlier, is probably more of a slow but steady situation to kind of get into. But doesn't mean that you can't also get the process of repealing it going as well. And maybe it might actually develop some kind of aspect where Prop 46 is the scary beast that it is. So.
I'm gonna add one more thing quick, since he said he had great neighbors. He's my next door neighbor. One thing I would say too, to anybody that's thinking repealing, and I strongly support repealing. I don't think amending will get us there. But that being said, listen to what Don said very, very carefully. Because if Don's saying it, there's another 5,000 people thinking it. And if we don't get where we need to get, we're in a lot of trouble. So part of the way, if you strongly believe in repealing it, you need to be able to get more than 100 people involved. 100 people is a failed petition, is a failed vote. A couple thousand people is probably a failed vote. If you strongly believe in it and you see it, you have to go out and talk to your 10 friends and have them talk to their 10 friends and their 10 friends. And you have to get them over the hump and sit down with them and see whether there's a chance to repeal or whether it has to be an amendment. But you need to get more than the people here and online. We can believe it, we can drink each other's Kool-Aid, we can tell each other we have beautiful children. It's not gonna matter if we're the only ones that believe that. You have to get other people involved, and by orders of magnitude, not just a couple people. But listen to what he says, because that's what we're facing. And he's being honest, and I know probably a good number of people in the room agree with him. So think very carefully and think how we do that, because if we fail, we're failed, right? There's no, we're failed.
Crystal, you have some questions from the...
Yes, Jean Pillow has just emailed me with a question. Is it true that a budget prepared to the maximum extent allowed under Prop 46, if voted down, can only be cut? But without Prop 46, a budget voted down can be amended up or down at the will of the voters?
Yes, I think that's correct. What do you want? The answer is yes, right?
Yeah, as I said earlier, that is a fact. The answer is yes. It can go up or down if there is no Prop 46 cap. That's the only thing that keeps us from coming out with another recommendation of a budget higher than what we had originally put out.
Megan?
It's a process question. Just as far as the timing, because I know everybody out there is on a time crunch right now, right? If a petition is submitted, I think, and Ed, you might actually know this better than me, the Board of Selectmen have to call a special town meeting within 3 weeks. And in order for it to go to referendum, another petition has to be submitted to get it there, or the selectmen can adjourn it to referendum. But that has to happen within no later than 2 weeks of that special town meeting. So at the most, you have a 5-week window. So it's not ideal, because I think that would be right smack in the middle of the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen presenting their budgets to the Board of Finance. But I think if amend or repeal, it has to happen quite quickly, because it has to happen before the Board of Finance makes its final decision on the budget that will go to voters at the annual town meeting and then the annual budget referendum. So it does have to happen fast, right? The other thing is, as Glenn and Lindsay said, there's a group that has been working on this for quite some time. So if you would like to be involved and you would like to hear about the educational forums that could be to come, please find one of us and give us your contact information. But something else the group has been working on, and Sue is our expert on this, is not just looking at Proposition 46, it is trying to look at other ways that we can support community members. I'm not an expert in planning and zoning, so I would have to defer to somebody there as far as helping to bring more diverse businesses to town to be able to generate revenue this way. But Sue can at least speak to something that we think that the Board of Selectmen in the town could do fairly quickly, possibly, and that would be in place for the next fiscal year.
Sue?
Hello. If I can really quickly respond to the library, we have association libraries in town, which means we do have boards that fundraise. We work really hard to fundraise. And so, as it is, if we make a few $1,000s in a fundraiser, we're very happy, and we can add to the limited budget that we get from the town. But we will take your donations. So the discussion of repealing, amending, whatever happens, what we're looking for is people paying more so that we can maintain our services, town and education-wise. And as agent for the elderly, I have to be concerned because I do hear from people who are struggling financially in their older age. And we don't want to put them at risk of staying in their home. So I called Jay with an idea, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I did notice on the Q&A that came out this afternoon, someone else had asked about a senior tax freeze, but the way the question was worded, the answer was about a state tax freeze. There is also allowable under Connecticut state law a municipal tax freeze for low-income elderly residents. 80% of municipalities in Connecticut have such a local option. Woodstock does not, yet. I think that we need to consider a local option. What a tax freeze would do is prevent your taxes from going up. Period. That's it. In order to have a local municipal tax freeze, you'd have to be at least 65 years old. Your income would have to be, the income levels are set by the state each year, so it fluctuates. We're talking about $40,000 for an individual, $50,000 for a couple, or less. We could set other limits and base those on the state. And then, of course, this has to be their primary residence. This can't be your summer home and you're getting a tax freeze. There's a state program. We have, I think about 70 people who use that state program, and with that, they get back between $100 and $1,000 on their local taxes each year. So if you might qualify for that and you weren't aware of it, please contact the assessor's office. They have the applications. But those same people could know that they could budget for their future to stay in their homes and that their taxes won't go up. How do we make this happen? Is it the same process? Do I need to gather signatures? I've talked with a number of assessors in other towns, Pomfret, Killingly, they have this program. So it's doable.
When did you call me from Florida?
Last week.
What day?
I don't know. I know that you're busy. I was not trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
You've had
No.
resignations this
No,
week.
I want to answer, because
It was
2
Wednesday or
days,
Thursday.
2 days after you called, and I was very excited, if you remember.
Yes.
And you had emailed me some material, and I was very excited to say, hey, when you come back, let's sit down and talk about it. 2 days after you called, I got an email. Hey, by the way, did Sue Connor contact you? And I wrote back and I said, yes, she did. We'll be dealing with it. And to give you an example, busy, I spent this weekend with Attorney Roberts in Weathersfield and Attorney Higgins in Woodstock, working on a project that would benefit the town, back and forth in emails. And I said, God, look at the three of us, Swan, Higgins, and Roberts. That sounds like a firm. Working on a what are we, idiots? We don't take any time off, we don't, you know. So anyway, I will call you, we will talk about it. It's one of the things that we're gonna look at to benefit people in town.
So does it need to, do I need a petition,
Let
or is
me
that
sit-
something
no,
you
let's
can
sit
start?
down and talk about it. Not tonight, next week, I will call you, I promise. We will sit down and talk and figure out how do
So
we go
it's
from here.
something that you can initiate rather than the townspeople initiating?
I want to talk to you. You had a great idea. Let's go with it. I don't think we need the townspeople with the villagers. We don't need the torches and the pictures. I think
But
we
we
want
need
to sit down and
townspeople for
talk
the
about
other-
it. Hey, where do we go? Simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ken Rappaport. I guess I've been here close to 30 years. I've been MIA for the last 7 or 8. My question, I mean, look, I've been here in Prop 46, dealt with school issues and all that. My kids went through here for a period. But the thing I think about, we're going to deal with all these costs going up, right? You're paying more. You have the other issue of your reduction of costs for town services or schools, and you look at all that. One of the things that we looked at years ago, and I don't think it ever went very far, and again, everybody's volunteers or so much time, revenue generation, right? There was one point that we're looking at what I guess is a Thai restaurant down there behind there was going to be a business district, and somehow they couldn't get it passed through. And I think Woodside Building Associates ended up putting houses in rather than kind of an economic development area. I guess my feeling would be I'd love to see if we're going to pay more, or if there's a vision that somehow says, how do you start to bring that into, whether it's agritourism or whether it's, people, tax, airports and that they tax things. So you want people come through. You talk about bicycle trails and things like that. Can you get more? Is there a way to drive the revenue up that we're not paying necessarily from taxpayers, but bring other people in town, take their money? You have the Woodside Fairway every year. These people, we can put a fence up and charge them to go through the roadway, but I think it's a public roadway. But the idea is, what could we do? And that's it. So that at least short term, where's the long term solution or vision to the town to be able to put our, be able to get some increased revenue than just out of just residential taxation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody else have any comments or questions they want to make?
Hi there, Norma Jean Loftus. I've been here 25 or so years, come to many meetings over the years, very familiar with the challenges with Prop 46. It's an arbitrary cap, and most people understand that, but not everybody understands it. So I'm echoing what I heard earlier, which is there is an issue because communicating a very complicated problem to lots and lots of people, it gets lost, it gets even more difficult, and there's fear in many people, which I think it's understood for the folks in the room here. So the problem, I feel like, is there's many parts of this problem. and the timeline is a problem. I always see every year we worry about the budget and how we're gonna fix it, and in a very short period of time, we get feedback. And I guess I would say that understanding this the way I do, and the way I've watched this over the years, I would say that many of the ideas that came up here are actually very valid. I think one of them is bringing people in the community together, many, many people, and with some leaders that can help guide a process, start working on the problems for the future, right? So I know we have a problem now. What I'm saying though is, if we start thinking about how do we look at this in the future, we can then look at this timeline, know it's a challenge, and we can get ahead of it in many ways. So I endorse that, and I think we have to work hard at doing that. I think there's a communication problem in the town. I think it's been around for 100 million years, and it's, you know, even with social media, not everybody's locked into the same form of communication. Once again, the message gets muddled when it gets communicated in different ways. So I think we have to acknowledge this problem, and we have to actually work at overcoming that one. That in itself is going to help the problem with funding, okay? It's going to help with the problem of having limited ways to bring in new revenue. So we have to look at these, what seem like disparate problems, we have to look at them, I think, holistically to try to solve this one against this timeline. I would also throw some thoughts out, if you don't mind, and hope no one laughs at me, because a lot of this is because I don't have the knowledge, but it would seem to me that there should be almost like a third party involved in helping us. The state of Connecticut, as an example, maybe I'm, you know, crazy to say this, but it just seems to me that there's got to be somebody in state government who can help us as a town look at this problem and say, we're going to try to help you from the side door, right? It's like we're all involved in this problem. We can't get past ourselves, right? Because of the timeline and the communication and the complexity. I almost feel like, could we like wave a flag to say, state of Connecticut, please help us, bring some resources in to help us, you know, get past the problems. There's the short term, then there's the long term. On the short term side, maybe, again, don't laugh, maybe there's a way there can be a short term loan, or a way that we can help fund for the short term, just so that we can analyze the problem and find a better way to solve it, okay? Not just, you know, again, looking at a condensed timeline, you know, chopping up an ordinance and hoping it's gonna work. You know, so I guess, I know I'm thinking crazy, like a loan, because loans cost money, but, you know, we all take out loans because we know that in the long run, there's, you know, you're gonna be better off in the end. So I throw that out there to say, I think we need help. I don't exactly know where. I'm thinking the state of Connecticut or some independent angle to come in to help us. I'm also saying that we need to have an organized way to bring the community together and communicate better. It's almost like we need activists, and there's plenty in the room here, but we need to have people that can come together to figure out how to communicate in a consistent way so that we look at this problem and we solve it for the short term and the long term. And thank you for everyone at this on the stage. I really do appreciate the volunteerism, truly do. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
I apologize in advance because I'm going to speak fast. I'm not going to speak as clear as the other speakers, but I'll do my best. Peter, thank you for reflecting the heart and conscience of our town. That was great. Matt, you asked some great questions, and if you've gotten answers, and I understand you don't have the answers to it would have brought this meeting back down to some reality. I came in town in 1975. I was here when Proposition 46 passed. I was on the Board of Finance for a little while. I had to deal with it myself. People say it didn't work. Well, it did work for a little while. It's not working now. It's clearly not working now. We have to do something about that. But if you think you're going to go out, and every time it came up for appeal, it failed massively. It's going to happen again this time. You're asking people who are paying double their utility bill, massive amount of increase in oil, food bills out of sight, that you're going to ask them to pay another $466, and that's what it says on that yellow sheet this year. It's not going to happen. Amending it could pass, because it's clearly needs to be done. But repealing it entirely has never worked in the past, and it's not going to work now. a lot of people here came here today already with the mindset, I'm gonna repeal this. And you all sat together and you all feel the same vibe and energy. But that's not what's out there in the town. When the day of the referendum, everybody in the town is gonna get in there. People are gonna get wheeled in there. This is gonna go down defeat if you try to repeal it. Amend it, yes. And I don't see why we can't add on the heat and utilities, because every one of us is dealing with that problem right now. We all know our utility bills are jumping, our heating bills are jumping. So it's common sense that our town utility bills and electricity is jumping. So if we could add that into the amendment, that would add another $131,000 in revenues. And that would pass. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, John.
Have a good night.
My name is Jennifer Theriak. I live in town for probably the last 15 years. I have a quick question. With all the talk about Prop 46, a lot of the feedback from people that want it to remain often make the argument that we don't need to pay more taxes, we need to generate more revenue. My question is, it sounds like unless it's in the grand list, extra revenue that the town could raise from tourism, the Woodstock Fair, that couldn't really be spent, correct? Because even if we had that extra money, Prop 46 limits the amount of money that we can spend. So I'm wondering if maybe we can make it more clear to the people who oppose amending or repealing Prop 46 that the idea of just generating more revenue will not solve the problem, because Prop 46 doesn't address that piece of it. I don't know if I'm not right.
I want to talk about the revenues for a minute. I'm having Mike come up here with me, just so people can kind of understand a little bit how it works for us in the finance office. So we can keep generating more revenue. When we generate more revenue, if it wasn't already in our budget, it just goes to the general fund. We can't spend it. So what we normally try to do is, as we're preparing for the next budget, we take that excess revenue into play. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll use some of that to offset the next budget. So yes, revenue is important because it can keep the mill rate down, but we still can't spend more. That's the biggest problem.
Right, so the people opposed to changing Prop 46, it feels to me like a lot of them don't understand that if we are only allowed to spend a certain amount, and that is not enough to fund our schools.
That's too bad, because that's what the ordinance says.
Right, and I feel like the arguments from people that want to keep Prop 46 don't understand that. They think just bring in more money and the problem is solved, and it's not exactly the way it is.
No.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to say. We're trying to say that when we prepare a budget, we have to do an expenditure and a revenue side. Our revenues are based on, just as examples, some of the things, building permits, landfill fees, all these different items that come in, and then we sit down with the tax collector and the town clerk, and we budget an amount of money. If we make that budget to offset the expenditures, any extra revenue goes back to the general fund. We cannot spend it. That's what I'm trying to tell people.
Right, but when I hear you talk about this is the process, it's important for some people that really want to have that transparency to hear about the process. There are a lot more townsfolk who don't understand or are not interested in the process.
Right.
And they're simply thinking in black and white. Prop 46 keeps my taxes down. If you need more money, find it another way.
is there a very simple, clear way to let some of the people in town understand Prop 46 has nothing to do with how much we get money from the Woodstock Fair or any other way? With Prop 46 here, this is the cap of how much we can spend, and it's not enough. Like, I feel like we get too difficult and too complicated in the way we're explaining it to some people who have.
If you allowed a marijuana grow facility in the town of Woodstock, which generated $2.5 million in taxes, you wouldn't be able to spend that money if Proposition 46 says you can't spend it.
Thank you. I guess we got time for one more.
Were there some questions
You want more comment? Sir?
I just want to say, what was wrong with what she just said, and who's going to get to work at your own town government to tell people that, to explain that? Because it strikes me the number one thing as an elected official you got to do is explain to people in a town, in a state, in a country, how the government works. If they don't know it, they ought to understand it. I think that ought to be somebody's job up there. I'm just saying.
Crystal, do you have some more?
Respond to that? Yes. Here's the opportunity. How many people are here?
Yeah, you know what, sir? There are other ways to communicate with this town. We're 68 square miles, we're large.
But here's one good example, 2 in a row. Better turnout last time than this time. So to come back and say to the leaders, you're not communicating, you gotta come.
You can do a little bit more than that, sir. I honestly, all of you understand that you can do more than that. There are other ways. All we ever get are David Richardson email, letters in the Villager. I don't see many of you folks writing those letters and explaining them. I think it's your responsibility. Just my opinion. But if I was an elected official, I'd damn sure tell people how the system works. If they don't understand.
Crystal, do you have?
I request that you all do that. Somebody write to the Villager and lay this out, because I didn't fully understand that. So now I do, and it's a shame. So I'm requesting that any or all of you get the word out.
Thanks. Hey, Crystal, just pointing out there were 2 emailed comments and questions that came in. We're just going to read them, so it'll be part of the consideration tonight. Maureen Quinn wrote in and asked, as a potential solution to the education budget, perhaps families pay 5% or 2.5% of tuition costs. Everyone is feeling the burden of the increased costs of, well, everything from individuals to business. But if this would allow room in the budget for other needed items without raising taxes, then perhaps that'd be worth looking into. I would imagine the tuition costs to the academy fluctuate from year to year as classes graduate. This year's graduating class is one of the larger classes, I believe. Would that have an effect on the total tuition amounts due? And thank you, Maureen Quinn. And then we also had a comment from Richard Griswold. He said, why are Woodstock EMS looking for $280,000 in town funding when they have historically billed for their services? If they are funded by the town, does that mean they will no longer bill for responding to an emergency? If we no longer have Woodstock EMS services, won't private emergency services continue to respond? And I think the answer to that question, I do believe the ambulance service would continue to bill. That's part of the revenue stream of the account on that.
Hey, Russ Down for the Woodstock Volunteer.
Hold on 1 second, if I can address one of those. As part of charging for tuition, I believe we are not allowed to charge high school tuition, at least by state statute. Correct. Right, so we can't do that. It would be a great idea if we could, we can't.
Russ?
EMS is looking for a total, I think it's 477,000. Yeah. All right, we would still be billing for other funds that need to run the ambulance. This is just for personnel services. The billing portion, about $190,000, goes to fuel costs, goes to Band-Aids, goes to oxygen. Oxygen last month was over $400. We have to sign a new contract. We're looking at a new way to do baby oxygen. That's $4,000. All right, that's for one item. I think I said last time we repaired a tire on an ambulance, that's $1,000. We're not looking for that, that would come out of the billing that they're bringing in. So the $477 we're looking for is just to run the ambulance 24/7. The last two meetings, last week and this week, we had a call during both those were ambulance calls. Both those otherwise would have been volunteer calls, which means Donna and someone else would have had to leave here to go there. We have 24/7 operations right now. They left immediately from here to go to the other end of the town. So that's why it's important for that money to be coming in, the $477. We haven't missed a call since December 4th, I think, a first response call without 24/7. So that's what we're looking for EMS.
Thank you, Chris. Jay just asked me to note or remind everybody, the town website does have a frequently asked question portal where it's going to be updated. They're also reflecting comments and questions tonight, and we encourage everybody to certainly take a look at that. Okay.
Hi, Mary Petrella. I work at the elementary school. I just have two quick things, and they're not really questions. The first one is in regards to knowing when things are happening. The onus is on you to know when things are happening. I will say that there's social media, it's in the newspapers, it is there, you can have emails sent to you. If you don't know that something's happening, seek it out. I don't think that the people that are on the stage, who a lot of them I agree with and a lot of them I don't think it's their job to hold your hand and tell you when things are happening. It's there, the information is there, they put it out there as much as they can. They can't knock on your homes and tell you when things are happening. My second thing that I want to say in regards to sorry, I don't like to talk, the education budget. We keep hearing a lot in the school, well, you guys do so much. You guys do such a good job. You do such a good job. You do such a great job with the crumbs that we get. And we do. But we are only human, and we're really tired. We're really tired of having to make do with what we get, with what we're allowed. We are so thin, so exhausted from having to make do. Your kids are going to stop suffering from it. My kids are out of the public school system now. So my tax money goes to those kids, those little ones who I see every day. We can't give them our best if we are so run ragged and so overworked that we are just being able to do the bare minimum. So when you consider your budget and when you consider whether or not to repeal or amend or whatever word you want to use, remember that there are human beings every day going in and doing so much more than you can ever imagine. And I'm like down here in terms of how much I put into it on a daily basis. I see people who are there 7 o'clock in the morning and don't leave until 5 o'clock at night, and then are working all night and working on the weekends and working on their vacations. There are real human people trying to do the very, very best that they can for your kids. It's not just about we want fancy new things, or, I mean, it would be nice to have a librarian and have computers and to be in the 21st century, but just to have a few more bodies in the building to help would be amazing. So just try to remember we are humans and we hear the things that people say about the people that work in the schools. That's it.
Just want to address one thing. Being the chair of the Woodstock Board of Ed, there's 9 of us, and we have differences of opinions. For me to go out and go on a social media platform and obliviate my, opinion about something is not really the way to handle it. We have a voice, and we talk about things all the time, and that voice happens once a month. It's the second Thursday of every month, and people can come to that meeting. There's a legal process to have those gives and takes and those processes of ideas and exchanges. We have it in citizens' comments. That's where it gets held. It doesn't get held on social media. And if you don't think I pay attention and read it all, I do. And I sit there and I have to, bite my tongue sometimes and think about it, but it's not that I'm not paying attention to it. But it is there, it's happening. And the proper place for it is at our Board of Ed meetings and our committee meetings that we have scheduled, that the agenda goes out to the public can see what that agenda is all about, and then they can decide whether they want to come and talk about the topics that we have to discuss, and that's the proper place to do it.
Also on the town website, you can get on a calendar when these various boards meet and what the agenda is, the times, where it is, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, before I bid you good night, I want to thank all of you for coming here. I also want to thank the concerned citizens for your input. I want to thank the 3 boards. I want to thank Victor and Janice, the superintendent, business manager, the finance director, and anybody else that came in. I know some folks had to leave. I want to especially thank Ed Higgins for keeping order. But again, thank you for your ideas. We've listened. We're going to move forward. Things will be better. So again, thank you and have a good night.